Hello everybody and welcome to my tutorial where I'm going to show you how to connect a MongoDB database to your Spring Boot project. So we're going to begin the tutorial by going to the Spring Initializer and we're going to create an empty Spring Boot project. I will keep the project type as Maven, I will keep the language as Java, the Spring Boot version I'm going to leave the currently selected LTS version, which is 2.6.1. Now in your case, when you're watching this video, the version might be different, so stick with the currently selected LTS version and it should be fine. For the project metadata, we're going to leave the com.example here as the group. The artifact, I'm going to call it MongoDB. And here I'm just going to change the description to say connect MongoDB database to Spring Boot. So that's going to be the description. The package name we're going to leave as that. The packaging we're going to leave as jar, and the Java version I'm going to leave as 11. Now, if you have installed another version of Java on your machine, you should choose that one. So for example, if you have 17, you can choose 17, but currently I have installed 11, so I'm going to choose 11. And now let's add the dependencies. So for this project, we're gonna need only 2 dependencies. So we're gonna need the Spring Web dependency. So that's the one that we're gonna need. And we're gonna need the MongoDB. So the Spring Data MongoDB. That's the other one that we're gonna need in order to connect to the MongoDB database. And now we're just gonna click generate down here. This is gonna download a zip file here. I'm gonna open the zip file and I will extract it right here on the desktop. And now this is the folder here. This is the empty project. Now I'm gonna open IntelliJ. We're gonna go to the open and we're gonna find this folder, the MongoDB folder. So I wanna be on the desktop right here. And this is where you can see the MongoDB project that we just created. So I'll click on it and I'll click OK. And that's gonna open this project. We're gonna click that we trust this project. And we're gonna open the project in IntelliJ. Now, let's wait for it to load up. Let's wait for Maven to download all the dependencies. As you can see in the pom.xml, we're gonna have 2 dependencies. The 2 dependencies that we just didn't mean to open the Maven thing. I meant to open the pom.xml. So as you can see here, we have the 2 dependencies. So we have the MongoDB, so the data MongoDB, and the starter web dependency. And other than that, we just have an empty Spring project with just the main Spring Boot application right here and nothing else. So what's going to be the first thing that we're going to do? We're going to be using MongoDB. And in order to run a MongoDB database, I'm going to use the cloud service that MongoDB offers. That's called Atlas. And what you can do, you can come here, you can click on try free and you can create a free account. And after you create your free account, you're going to be able to create a free cluster. And when you create a free cluster, you're going to get presented with something like this here. You just go through the process, you just create an account and it's going to guide you to the process to create your first cluster for free. So just make sure that you select the free version. That's going to be on the right side here when I created it, but just make sure to check the free version and everything's going to be free and you're going to be able to create a cluster here. And it might take some time in order for the cluster to provision or to get started, but after it's started, it's gonna ask you to create a username and a password, and to to add your IP or more IPs from which you allow access to the cluster. But what I've done here is but I'm gonna go through the process again here. So after you create your cluster like this, you want to go to the database access. Now, if you don't have a user, just click add a new database user. But in this case, I already have a user, so I'm gonna go and edit this user. And that's what I'm going to do is I'm going to edit the password. So you want to click here on this edit password and just click the auto generate secure password. Now we're going to copy that password. Now I recommend doing it this way. So this is a little more secure password than if you just type in something yourself. But if you don't have a user, what you're gonna have to do is just add a new database user, just add the username and just auto generate the password. If you already have a user, because it's gonna ask you to create in the first place, just come here and edit the password out. And that's about that. Then the network access, that's another important one. So currently, because this is for testing, what I've done here is I put 0.0.0 That's 0, so I have put 4 zeros here, and that means that we allow access from any IP. Now, obviously, if this is a production system, you would want to allow access to the database only from certain IPs, but in this case, because we're using it for demonstration purposes, we just added this IP right here. Now, that's how you add an IP. Just click on the Add IP, and you can just enter here 0.0.0.0, or you can enter your current IP address if you want access just from your local machine. But in this case, because we're using this for testing purposes, we're gonna leave it with the 0.0.0.0, so or for access from all IP addresses. And now, how do we connect to this database from Spring Boot? So that's gonna be the first thing that we're gonna do. So we're gonna come to the resources here and to the application.properties. And this is where we have to put the connection string. And I'll do spring.data.mongodb. That's how it is. And that URI, that's where we put the connection string. And we also have to specify the name of the database. So this is going to be database right here like that. And then where do we find this connection string? So you're going to come to your Atlas instance here, and you're going to click this connecting here. When you click that, click on connect your application, and this is the connection string that you need to use. Now you could choose here Java, but the connection string would be the same. Let me just find Java, but the connection, so I just do that, but the connection string is gonna be the same, and this is the connection string. You want to copy this, and then when you copy this thing, you want to just paste it right here. And now a very important thing, this is going to be your username here, the user that you have, and this is where you have to put your password. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and generate a password. So I'm going to go here to database access, and I'm going to generate a password for user 1. So let's go to edit user, and what we're going to do is we're going to click edit password, and I'm just going to auto generate the secure password, and I'm going to copy that password. And I'll go ahead and save this user. So you want to go down here and you want to click update user. That's really important. And then I'm going to come here. I'm going to remove this password, and I'm just going to paste the password that I just generated. Now, this is the password and this is the user. And in the database, I'm just going to, in this case, I'm going to be creating a product model. So the database name can be, I don't know, products or something like that. Products DB. Let's name it like that. Products DB, I guess, because I'm going to be creating a model product. Now, what we could do now? Now we could start the application and see if it starts up. So let's run it, and let's see if it starts up. And that's exactly what I'm going to do right now. So let's see if everything is fine until now. And okay, that's good, as you can see. And as you can see, we actually opened the connection to MongoDB, so we successfully connected here. As you can see, so we're successfully connected to the cluster, and we have an open connection running right here. So now we are able to continue with our application. And I just want to open Postman, because we're going to be using Postman to access our database. So let me open Postman. And let's get it ready, because we're going to be using to test our API. Let me see if I have anything open from before here. I think I probably have something. Yes, I have some product things, but I will I will not save these changes. So this is something that cancel. I did not mean to do that. I mean, I don't want to save them. Don't save, and that's fine. Okay, so we have an empty session of Postman here that we're going to use later. Now let me just make this a little bigger. Yes, just like that. Okay. And now let's start with the application. So what we've done until now, so we've successfully connected to our Atlas MongoDB cluster here with our Spring Boot application using the application.properties right here. Now we're going to create our model. So I'm going to come to my main package here, and I'm just going to create a new package that I'm going to name model. And I'll click enter. And in this package, I'm going to add a Java class, and I'm going to name the class product. We're going to create a product model that's going to represent a product. And now this product, we can specify how do we want the documents to be called. So what's the name of the documents? And in this case, I'm going to so that's a term in MongoDB because we store the data in documents, and I would like these documents to be named products, because that obviously is what we're keeping here. We're going to be keeping products, so I want that to be called products. And now what are we going to do? So now we're going to give some properties to the product. One of them is going to be the ID. Now it's really important to add this ID annotation that's going to represent that this is the ID of the product. And this is going to be a private string ID. Then I'm going to have a couple of more. I'm going to have a private string name and a private string description. I'll add the constructors and the getters and setters right now using the generate feature in IntelliJ. So I'll just add the default constructor. I'll add an all arguments constructor. I'll accept the ID, so I won't put the ID in the constructor because that's going to be automatically generated. And I'll just add the getters and setters. So let's go ahead and do that. So now we have our model right now. And now after we've created our model like this, what the next thing that we have to do is so this is going to represent a product in the database. Now the next thing that we're going to have to do is we're going to have to create a repository that's gonna work with this model. And I'm going to create a new package right here that I'm going to name repository. And in this package, I'm going to create a product repository. Just a second, repository. A product repository. And this is going to be an interface, so it's not going to be a class. Now, what do we have to do right here? This is just a regular interface, and this interface will extend Mongo repository. And then this Mongo repository takes the model, so product, and the type of the ID, which is a string. And this thing like this is a repository that's going to be already implemented. It already has some default methods, as you can see right here. And we can directly inject this repository in our services and use it. And we can inject it as a bean through dependency injection. And it already comes with predefined methods. And that's exactly what we're going to do. So this is going to be our repository. It's similar to the JPA repositories that we use for the relational databases. This is basically it's that kind of repository that already has predefined methods. But what are we going to do right now? So now what are we going to do? Now we're going to create the controller, the testing controller. So I'm going to go new, and I'm going to create another Java package. And I'm just going to create a controller package here. And in the controller package, we're going to put the product controller. Product controller, like that. And this is going to be annotated with a REST controller, because we're going to be creating a REST API right now. And let's start with the first get mapping that probably is going to return all of the products from the database. So I'll just have it at /product, and I'll have a public, and this is going to return a response entity out of, it's going to return a list of products. So I'm just going to have this like that. And let me just import list here. And the name of this handler function is going to be find all. I guess it could be like that, or get all products. Let's say get all products. All right, and let's implement this function. So before we implement it, we first have to inject our repository right here. So I'll do basically private product repository, and I'm just gonna also do final here. And now all we have to do is IntelliJ is going to help us here to add it as a constructor parameter, and that's basically going to inject this dependency right here. So it's going to inject the bean of this dependency so that we can use it right here. And then what I'm going to do to list all the products, I'm going to do return. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to do this dot, so I'm going to return a response entity, status OK, and what I'm going to do is I'm just going to return this dot product repository dot find all, and that's going to return all of the products. Now I will restart the application here, and we're going to try to go to this route through Postman and see what are we going to get back. Now we should get an empty list back because we don't have any. Let me see if I have anything here from before. If I have, I would like to probably delete it. Because if I have something, I would probably like to delete it. And yes, I do have something that I was testing out, so I will delete all of this. So let me delete this. This is from before when I was testing, so let me delete it here. So I'm going to drop that. And as you can see, everything is empty here. So when you go to your cluster, to the overview, if you go to the collections, if you just created it, it's going to be empty like this. So now let's go here. The application has started. Let's go to Postman, and I'll create a new route here, a GET request to HTTP 8080/product. Let's click send and let's see what's going to happen. So we should get an empty list back, and that's exactly what we're getting. We're getting an empty list right here. So now let's create a route that's going to allow us to create a product. So that's going to be a post mapping. So it's going to be the next thing. And I will create a product. So that's going to be a post mapping mapped also to product. And now if I go to public, this is going to return the created product, I guess. So it can return a product. This is going to be named create product. And let's see how would we create a product. So we probably want to send it in a post request, and we probably want to send it in the request body of the HTTP message. So that's where I'm going to be receiving a product. And what I'm going to do is I'm just going to basically use this dot product repository, but I will do a return here, and I'm just going to say response entity dot OK. And I'll just call this dot product repository dot save, and I'll just save the product that we get from the request body. This is going to return the saved product. So what is this going to do? This is going to call the save method right here. It's going to save this product that we sent to the request body, and it's going to return the saved product as a response. So now we can go ahead and we can test out this thing. So I'll restart the application, and I'll go to Postman right now, and let's go to Postman. And in this case, I'm going to create a new route here. I'll copy the URL because the URL is going to be the same, but the method is going to be post. So we want to change that to post. Now we want to come here to the body, and we want to change the type to be raw, and we're going to choose here JSON. And now what are we going to send? If you ask me right now, it's not really that great of an idea to have the module here. It's probably a good idea to have some resource class. So that's actually what I'm going to do. I'm going to create another package here. I'm going to name it resource. I'm just going to name it resource like that. And I'm going to put a Java class here, which is going to be a product request. And in here, we're just going to have two parameters, private string name and private string description. Okay. And I'll just add the standard and the classic constructors. So the no argument constructor I want to add. and I want to add the all arguments constructor right here. That's what we want to have here, because we're creating like a resource class that we're going to be returning, and all of the getters and setters right here. It would be nice to have them, so I'll put the getters and setters right here. And now, instead of receiving in our controller here, instead of receiving in the body a product, we're gonna receive a product request, because that's a little better. So I'm just gonna say, and let's just name it product request, and we're gonna save. And now, what are we gonna do? So now we can just save this, because this is not a product. What I'm gonna do now is, let me just remove. Okay, so what I'm gonna do now, because we can just save it. Now we need to map it into product. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna create a new product. Product equals new product, and I'll just set the fields here. Product.set name to be the one that we get from the product request. .get name, and the same thing for the description. Okay, so let me first set the name here, set description, and this is going to be get description, but not like that. More like that, I guess, and get description. So what are we doing? We're creating a new product. Let me just make that a little more readable like this. Okay. So we're creating a new product, we're setting the name to the one from the request, we're setting the description to the one from the request, and now we're gonna be saving this product to the database and returning that product back to the user. And then this would be actually, nice if it's a little different. So if it's a response entity dot status, so if we leave the status here at 201, because that's for the created, and then we can just say body, and this is going to be the body. So this is a little better, more appropriate. So when we create something, we want to return 201 created status. So that's why I changed that like that. So it's going to be response entity.status 201.body, and the body is going to be the product. And now let's restart the application, and let's test this out and see if it works. So I'm going to restart the application right now, and we're going to see if this thing works. So we're going to wait for it to restart. And we're going to go to Postman, and let's try to create a product. So we have the post route. In the body we have the JSON that we're going to be sending. And now what do we need to send? We need to send, let's go to our request resource. We need to send a name property and a description property. These in the JSON have to be the same. Now, if you like to change them, for example, you could add here like a JSON property, and then you can, I don't know, you can name it differently, like with a capital N or something like that. Or if you want a completely different name, you can do that. But in this case, we're going to be using the same ones. So I'm going to remove the JSON property annotation. And right now, what I'm going to do is we're going to come back to Postman, and we're going to create a product. So I'm going to put a name here, and the name is going to be like product1, and I'm going to put a description. The description is going to be product1 description. So let me just copy product1 and say description like that. And I'm going to click send right now. Now, after I click send, there, as you can see, we got our product back right here. But as you can see, it has an ID. So this ID is auto-generated by MongoDB. And now we come back to the get route that gets all of the products. What's going to happen is if I click send, we're going to get that product here. So now we have something in the database. We have a product. And if I come back here, if I create another product, so I'm just going to change this to 2, and I'm just going to create another product. And I click send here. We get it back with a different ID. And if I run this route again here, we're having 2 products in the database right now, as you can see. And they're getting returned right here. If we come to the dashboard here for the cluster on Atlas, and if we come to collections, you're going to see that we're going to have a products DB. So that's picking it up from here, from the application properties. We specified what we want the DB to be named. And then from the product that we specified, what do we want the documents to be called? Products. So that's where it's picking up this name here, products. And if we go into products, you're going to see the 2 products that we just created. They're right here with their data in them. And now let's implement a couple of more methods in our controller so we can implement a find by ID. So that's going to be similar to this one. So I will copy it. It's going to be very similar to that one, but we're going to make a couple of changes. So we're not going to return a list. We're going to return a one product, and we're going to say get product by ID. And let's actually not return, let's just return a generic, let's just return a response entity. And now we're going to have a pet variable right here, the ID. So this is how you specify a pet variable in the get mapping. And that pet variable has to be received here. So I'm going to receive it here as a string ID, and this has to be the same with this, so it gets mapped to it. So if this is ID, this has to be ID here like that. And now we're not going to be returning all the products, but first, what are we going to do? We're going to do something like this: product, and then equals this dot product repository dot find by ID. We're going to pass the ID. Now this, not that, but I want to have an ID here. Now this is going to return an optional, so we're going to wrap this into an optional. Let me just do that, like that. We're going to import the optional. And now, what do we want to do? We want to check if the optional exists. So if product.is present, then we want to return the product to the user. So then we want to respond. Then we want to return a response entity .ok status OK product.get. That's in the case that we have something in the optional, that we have a product. But in the case that the optional is empty, and that's how the optionals work, we can just return like a response entity again .ok. But this is going to be a string. Let's just say like the product with ID, and we can put the ID here like that. Was not found. So we return a message and we say that the product with that ID was not found. Now we can go ahead and test out this route. Let me just add this thing here, okay. And I'll just restart the application right now, and we're gonna go and we're gonna test out this route and see if it works. So I'll wait for the application to start up right now, and I'll go to Postman again. And in here, I'll list all of the products again. And I'll copy one of these IDs. So I'll just get the first one, the product one. And then we're going to go to create another route here. It's going to be http/product. It's going to be a get HTTP method, but this time I'm going to add a pet variable. I'm going to add the ID that I just copied from here, and that's from the first product, so we should get back the first product. Let's click enter, and there we go. We get our first product back. Now, if I were to put something that doesn't exist, let's put a test here. It's going to say the product with ID test was not found. And that's pretty good, right? That's pretty fine that we get that error message back. So if something was not found. Now what we can do, now we can implement a delete also. So that would be a delete mapping. That's going to be to product. And that's still going to take an ID as a pet variable. So it's going to be the same. Now this can be very similar. And so that's why I'm going to copy this function. It's going to be very similar to the get all product get, and this shouldn't be all, this should be get product by ID. Okay, and this is going to be very similar to this one. So I'm just going to say delete product by ID. So it's going to be very similar. We are going to check to see if the product exists. So we're going to say return response entity product, but we're not going to return the product. What are we going to do is we're gonna do something else. We're going to do this dot product repository. So if it's present, if it's in the database, I'm just gonna say delete by ID here, and I'm just gonna say ID. So that's if it's present, and I can return a string here that's gonna say success, for example, that it's successfully deleted. In the case that we don't find the product, we're just gonna return again the same message that we just we're just gonna return the message that we can't find the product and we can delete it. So what is this gonna do? This is gonna check if the product is in the database. If it is in the database, it will delete it. If it's not in the database, it will inform the sender of this request that the product with that ID was not found. So I'll restart the application and we'll test this out. So let's go ahead and do that. And I'll come to Postman right now. And we're gonna go ahead and test this out. So I'm gonna create another mapping here to localhost 8080 product, but this time it's gonna be a delete mapping. And let's choose an ID. So let's click send here. So we have two products. Let's create another, or let's just delete the first one, I guess. So I'm gonna copy the ID here. I'm gonna pass it as a path variable, and I'm gonna click send, and it said success. And if we come and if we get all products again, you're gonna see that we no longer have product 1 in our database. And if we come here, if I reload here, you're gonna see that also that's gonna be reflected right here. So we're not gonna be able to see product 1 anymore. And as you can see, we don't see the product 1 anymore here. Now, that's gonna be all for this tutorial on how to connect the MongoDB database to your Spring Boot project. I hope you learned something new. So yeah, that's gonna be all for this video, and see you until the next one.